Hello everybody, and welcome back for our third in the series of Talking to the Global Shapers. We're joined by Krystle today, and I think you'll be fascinated about what she's up to and her views on trust and responsible leadership. Krystle, why don't you give our viewers just a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what your passions are.
Right. Thank you, Ellyn. I'm Krystle Reid. First and foremost, I'm a Colombo Shaper. I'm a part of the Global Shapers community.
And that's Colombo, Sri Lanka, right?
Yes, that's right, a tropical island. So actually, I'm the co-founder for Enable Lanka Foundation. It's an organization founded by myself and my colleague Janitha. We work on disability inclusion. Mainly, yes, it's mainly on young people and trying to get them a more inclusive education and look at the opportunities that they have in the sphere of employment.
And what are some of the things you do to help young people who are disabled get to work? What are the...
Well, mainly we actually try to work with organizations who are already offering employment, but at the same time who doesn't have the necessary knowledge and understanding to how to cater to these type of employees, to give them various kind of training programs and get them to understand what inclusivity means in real terms. One thing we all need to understand is that inclusion does not happen in isolation. Whenever we talk about inclusion, we try to separate people who have disabilities and we talk about them. But that's not the point. The point that we're trying to highlight is inclusion will only happen when we all work together, regardless of having a disability or your ability. Yeah.
I absolutely love that. I absolutely love that. I think you may or may not know that Accenture is very committed to inclusion and diversity and really ensuring that all of our people, all of our 469,000 people around the globe feel like they belong. And I think that your organization is really helping employers like ours to figure out how to do that. So bravo to you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
The theme this week for Accenture is around trust. And trust, we believe, is the ultimate currency in the digital age. And do you have some thoughts on what you believe trust is through the eyes of either your organization or someone of your generation?
Well, to be honest, when it's come for information technology, and given there's so much of big data out there, and with the artificial intelligence, there's a lot of information that's available for any of us. And the thought of getting this information into the wrong hands, and the thought of that could be used against someone's goodwill without someone's consent is quite daunting. So if you talk about my organization, Enable Lanka, on a daily basis, we work on sensitive information, information on marginalized communities. And these people have the trust on us for us not to divulge certain information. But of course, with their consent, I keep on repeating, it's a consent that matters. Because through consent, we build that trust, and through that, we can help these communities. Therefore, I think trust is such a strong word. And with so much of information, like I said before, being available, and with information, there has been so much of avenues that have been opened up for people as well. So, I mean, it's kind of a superpower for me, to be very honest. So how do we, strike a balance between these superpowers in our hands and use it for the right reasons and for the right causes? Yeah.
And do you have any thoughts on what really might be the characteristics of a responsible leader?
Well, to be honest, before I sat in for this interview, I spoke to a few global shapers, and most of them were like, oh, we don't trust our leaders, we don't trust in them to deliver. And then the thought is, how can we as a next level of generation, next level of leaders can rebuild on this trust? I mean, it's very tricky because there's a lot of things, a lot of challenges already in front of us, and how do we choose our battles? And one thing that I think is it's quite important for us to understand each other and our priorities. And how do we hold our political leaders and authorities out there, how do we hold them accountable and responsible to deliver and to ensure that trust is reinstated the way it was given to them at one point?
And I love how you articulate the fact that you are a leader and that you are holding other people accountable because you view yourself as a leader. And I think that two-way conversation that you were referring to is I think at the very essence of responsible leadership, and it really makes me very proud of you, but also very humbled to think about, you know, what leaders of the next generation have on their mind and what they're expecting perhaps of leaders of my generation. And I really appreciate how strong your views are and how you're clearly articulating what's important to you. I think it's fantastic.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about what you're up to this week. You know, you're here at the annual meeting of the World Economic Forum in snowy Davos, which we'll get to in a minute. But what are the things that you hope to accomplish this week?
Right. So this week is quite crucial for me because I think this is the first time that the forum is going all out there talking about inclusivity. In fact, it's, as global shapers, it's one of our impact projects that we are targeting by 2021 about equity, equality, and inclusion. And this week, I'm trying to somehow make a voice out there for people, young people out there who cannot make that voice for themselves, especially for young people with disabilities. How do we include them in the system? How do we create spaces for them to access? How do we bring that voice in?
So, Krystle, you have a unique opportunity this week to talk to a lot of world leaders, government leaders, business leaders, world leaders in many different sectors. And you've talked about a little bit about the trust that's already been broken and holding leaders accountable. And you pose a very important question. What are leaders going to do about this broken trust? But because you're here and because you're at this annual meeting, what would you like to tell them to do about it? What action can they take to start to rebuild the trust?
Right. So if we take the Sustainable Development Goals right now, we talk a lot about the mismatches and we talk about bringing equality. And in order to bring this equality, I think the leaders today needs to advocate and push for, enable equity. That's something that they really need to focus on. And at the same time, I think there should be some level of a regulatory system governing them. Because organizations like the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, the global shapers as young leaders, and even big corporates like Accenture could actually hold these people accountable. We could go back and ask, what have you done to ensure that this trust is going to be rebuilt, that this trust will be reinstated among all people around you and in the public in general. So I think that's something that I feel they should do very firstly.
Well, I think that's fantastic, and I think it circles back around to the beginning about building trust, and that transparency builds trust. And I'm certainly going to take away from our discussion today that we need to be more transparent. All leaders need to be more transparent about what they're doing to be equitable and build equity as we move into this next phase of our world. And I couldn't thank you enough for being with me today. I am astounded by your views and your ability to articulate them. And so I'm going to leave you the opportunity to give one last piece of advice to the viewers out there. Many young people will be watching, so what advice do you have for them?
Well, one advice. I think this is the advice I've always followed. For me, the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing right now is because I'm driven by something called my fear. A lot of people think it's such a negative thing, it's such a cowardly thing, but your fear factor is what will inspire to do something differently. I fear that my future will not be inclusive enough. I fear my future will not have accessibility. I fear my future will have no rights for a woman or a girl child. So I would encourage all of them out there to ignite your fear into something more inspirational and do something greater and impactful. That's my advice because I follow it all the time.
Well, I think that's fantastic advice. And we're going to close our discussion today with Krystle, who believes that trust is a true superpower, and I think she is a superhero. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.